such a massively important time of life, isn't it? The early years, we are quite often told this is so much better than putting them on an iPad in the hospital. You know, this stuff is building their brains. So we really, really want to be just out there doing that, harnessing that as much as we possibly can, reinforcing that message that we've been talking about today, that every one of you has a voice and that you can use it with your child, regardless of whether you think it's good or bad, or what you see coming back to you. It will almost certainly be something that's positive to explore.
Welcome to Inspiring Voices, the podcast of the Sing Up Foundation. We believe in harnessing the power of singing to improve mental health and well-being for children and young people. I'm Celi Barbaria.
And I'm Baz Chapman. In this series, we've paired guests from different areas of research, practice and strategy to make connections and to understand more deeply the unique role of singing, songwriting, voice exploration and creative music making in transforming children and young people's mental health and well-being.
This second series focuses particularly on how we can inspire young voices, and especially on how children and young people who have particular challenges in their lives that can affect their mental health can be supported through singing and music making. Inspiring Voices, the podcast of the Sing Up Foundation. We're super delighted to welcome our two guests today onto Inspiring Voices. We're delighted to welcome Zoe Challenor. She's the founder and director of Bee Opera. She's a graduate from the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, and Zoe combines her professional singing career with a passion for early childhood education. Through Bee Opera, she creates interactive musical experiences for babies and toddlers across the West Midlands, and Bee Opera is also part of the Birmingham Early Years Music Consortium, Sounds of Play. She's a dedicated advocate for giving even the youngest children a voice in the arts. So welcome, Zoe.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
And also joining us is Professor Rosie Perkins. She's a professor of music, health, and social science at the Royal College of Music. Her research focuses on how music supports societal well-being and enhances musicians' career development. She's also got a particular passion for exploring the intersection of music and parental well-being, and co-chairs the Music and Parental Wellbeing Research Network. And her recent book, Music and Parental Wellbeing, brings together practice and research on how music can enhance mental well-being throughout parenthood. And Rosie also holds positions as an honorary senior research fellow at Imperial College London and is also a fellow of the Royal Society for Public Health. So welcome, Rosie.
Thanks so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
So today we're exploring the interconnected world of singing and how singing can support both children's development, but also parental well-being. And we're also actually recording this during Maternal Mental Health Week. So it's particularly poignant that we're having this discussion. So Rosie, let's start with what initially drew you to research the connection between singing and parental well-being?
That's a great question, maybe quite a long answer that I will try and summarize down. So for a long time, I had been interested in music and well-being, music and health, and had started to work in that area. It had been a bit of a winding route to get there. I started off working on research around musical learning and teaching in higher education and thinking around how higher music education institutions could really support students to explore different types of career possibilities and to think widely about what those careers might look like and then to equip them with the skills to take those opportunities. And one of the things that research showed to us was that there was an opportunity for finding new places, new spaces, new things for musicians to try during their higher education. And so that led to thinking about work in local communities, work with different people who perhaps the students wouldn't be coming into contact with otherwise, in a kind of concert audience type situation. And so I'd been working on various projects in music and health, and then I became a mum. And I realized that a lot of the stuff I'd been talking about, researching, reading about was really relevant in parenthood. And so together with Daisy Fancourt, who was my collaborator on some of the early projects that we did, we started to put these things together and look at what we knew about parental well-being, where the gaps were in that, both in sort of research terms, but also just practical terms, like where parents could go for support, for example, if they had postnatal depression. Started to sort of build a picture of some of the gaps there for parents, and then some of the gaps in the music and health research as well, which hadn't at that point really looked that much at parents. There had been some research done around neonatal intensive care and spaces like that, for example, but there wasn't yet a sort of real momentum behind research on parents specifically and postnatal depression, which was an area that we had identified as being particularly interesting. So we sort of put those two things together. And there was quite a fortuitous funding call from Arts Council England, and we're fortunate enough to be one of the recipients of those awards, and that sort of started the work. And that was a project we then did around group singing and postnatal depression. So I think it was a mixture of personal experience and research interests colliding.
Great. And Zoe, how about you? How about the kind of the beginning of Bee Opera and why you started Bee Opera?
Yeah, so Bopra really came out of a need, a desire. It doesn't matter.
Sorry.
We're used to both, and it really doesn't matter. But Bopra kind of gets the feeling of babies bopping, I suppose. Yeah. No, it came out of a desire to bring people together really around a shared experience of something beautiful. So music was the language for me. That was the language that I knew. But even deeper than that, I suppose, was this desire to bring people together from very, very different walks of life, from very different backgrounds, in order to share in something. And we'd been going for only a few months, I think, when we started realizing, people started saying to us it wasn't just a wonderful musical experience, but they were reporting changes in well-being, reduced anxiety, changes in mental health, just by coming together and being in the same room in a group around this musical experience. And that was a real eye-opener to us. And that was 8 years ago. And now we're working in Birmingham Children's Hospital, running a project called Mother Voice and creating collaborative performances and operas with communities. One of them was with the Springfield community mostly made up of people from Pakistan, a lot of Urdu speakers who brought their experiences and lives and language and things into this piece that was for children. Yeah, lots of different ways in for us to this topic.
Yeah. And so this is the point for us to really kind of deal with a big question. Like, so why singing? Why is singing particularly good as opposed to like any other sort of musical exploration for this age group and for their parents in terms of well-being?
I think for me, one of the wonderful things about a voice is that everybody has one, and including children. Now, children use their voices differently, and it can be very exploratory. I think that a lot of what early years children do is actually trying out. They're trying out pitches, they're trying out their voices, they're exploring. And sometimes it gets kind of shushed away as noisy and chaotic and you know, it's not organized sound in the way that we as adults recognize it, but it is really important. It's their first playful explorations and attempts. Another thing I love about making music with families is the languages. We can explore different languages. We sing in other people's languages, and that's a way of connecting, I think, fundamentally. When we learn a song in their language and then we sing in that language, some amazingly beautiful things happen and doors open across cultures and bridges can be crossed. You've also got lots of the wonderful health benefits of singing on your website, I think, listed, you know, the oxytocin release, the dopamine, the endorphins, the reduced cortisol. And as we work a lot in Birmingham Children's Hospital, where there is a lot of traumatic experiences for those children, I think those things are incredibly important. And staff frequently point out the reduction of heart rate, pulse, and improved SATs on the machines when we're singing with babies as young as a few hours old sometimes.
Wow. And Rosie, why singing?
Yeah, everything that Zoe said. And in some of our early research, we tried to look at that question by comparing what mums told us about singing compared with being together kind of playfully, but without any singing. And it was really interesting because there were quite a few things that were similar about those two experiences. So like coming together with other moms, having a social moment, having a routine, something to be at a certain time, get out of the house, all those sorts of things. But with the singing that we didn't see in the kind of non-musical part of what we were doing was this real sense of inclusion through the voice. Everyone can get involved. And with that came this sort of immersion just being like in a musical moment and forgetting about the fact that you haven't slept properly for however many months, and maybe feeding's really difficult, or you have another worry, or whatever it is that's going on. And so just kind of being in the moment. And then, of course, the joy is that that is happening with your baby or your babies. And so there's also this connection through the voice. And some of the fabulous workshop leaders, facilitators that we've worked with have taught a lot about how your voice is like one of your baby's favorite sounds, like parent's voice. So it's something that a baby wants to hear, enjoys hearing, responds to. And then it's this really kind of positive feedback cycle, because if you see your baby relaxing or smiling or getting involved with something you're doing vocally, then it probably makes you feel a bit better or a bit more connected or in the moment. So I think all the things Zoe said, and then this sense of kind of connection and immersion and the emotional expression that can come with that as well, because obviously you've got melody and lyrics and sound, and you can put all of that together and maybe make up songs about parenthood that give you that shared experience with that other people are going through something similar, or that's just funny or silly, or even maybe sings about the darker sides of parenthood, the things that people find harder. So all of that expression, I think, can come through with singing as well.
Yeah, and I think there's also research, isn't there, that shows that babies listen for longer to singing than they do to speaking, which is really, really interesting. So we have their attention, and we'll hold their attention for longer. And Colwyn Trevarthen's work about communicative musicality talks about the bonds of children with their caregivers that are forged through this communicative nature of music, of the voice. And that's massive. You know, he talks about how that's how they build their sense of self in the world. If we're talking about well-being and mental health, the baby's sense of self, of being seen and heard and responded to through communicative voice, is just so central.
Yeah. And Rosie, one of the things you said there as well was about this kind of mindfulness. And I know I experienced this, that when you're singing with your baby, like you said, you get into that moment, or you get into the song, you get into seeing them smile, where it actually becomes kind of a mindful moment of the day where you have to concentrate on that thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we've seen that in other research with music more widely, including singing, but just with music more widely, that it can really give that sort of feeling of immersion, but also sometimes that can bring like respite. It can just be a bit of a break. And at the same time, or at different times, it can also be this release as well. So I really believe that music is sort of what someone needs it to be in that moment. Maybe it needs to be a release, or maybe it just needs to be stepping out, or maybe it just needs to be that moment of connection. And that can change for all of us, like through a session, right? Or through a musical experience, but also day to day as well. Yeah, so it's so adaptable, I think.
That, you know, that really makes me think about Professor Grenville Hancock talks about the fact that we are hardwired to sing. You know, we're sort of born with this need, I suppose, and certainly ability. But there's also a kind of a hardwiring there between parent and carer or and baby that it strikes me needs to be kind of nurtured and kept alive and allowed to flourish. There's an amazing opportunity there to use singing to nurture that connection, isn't there?
And it's so whole, isn't it? It involves what you were saying, Rosie, makes me think about how singing involves the whole being. We bring our body to it because we use our breath and our attention, that focus, that mindful sort of focus. And the imagination is activated as we sing about things, and so much more besides. It also has the possibility to draw in other people. Sometimes we find we're singing with a baby or a little one in the hospital, and a parent, a caregiver will join in, and sometimes staff join in. And we've had 5-part harmony going on sometimes when certain people are in the room. So there's an ability for people to just spontaneously join in that you wouldn't get with instrument playing or other kinds of music.
Yeah. So I know you guys have already talked about some of these things, but are there any physiological changes that research has shown that happens between parents and babies when singing occurs?
Yeah, so we didn't look into this too much in our own research, but we did have a little look at stress hormones and how they can change during singing. And we just compared one session of singing with another session of sort of chatting, social interaction. I do think we found some reductions in cortisol, which is a stress hormone, in the singing group, but not in the sort of social interaction group. And there's been other wider research around those sort of physiological mechanisms done by many other esteemed colleagues. But we certainly saw indications that there are those sorts of physiological responses. And that came alongside people saying that they just felt better, like more positive emotions and fewer negative emotions. And that was mirrored then physiologically in what was happening in the body as well.
And I think I remember reading, this was part of the Melodies for Mums project, was that the women that took part that had postnatal depression, I think 73% of them, that participation in the group led to them recovering from postnatal depression quicker. Is that right? Can you tell us a bit more about that project?
Yeah, of course. So this was the Arts Council England project that I was mentioning at the beginning, and we compared 3 groups. So we had everyone in the study had some symptoms of postnatal depression, but some of those were more moderate to severe than others. And we had one 10-week group singing program, one 10-week kind of creative play program, but with no music, and then one 10-week care as normal program. So the mums continued to access whatever support they were accessing. Then at the end of that, they took part in singing. And we found that for mums in the singing group, they had a much faster rate of recovery from symptoms of postnatal depression, which, given how debilitating PND is, the impact it has on mums, partners, babies, a faster rate of recovery is really important. So that has benefits for everyone in the family and, of course, for the baby as well.
Of course. And Zoe, in your Mother Voice project, it feels like that's very connected to what Rosie's talking about.
That's right. Yeah, this came out of the desire to make a piece around birth journeys. We're planning to make a birth journey opera. I think anyone who's given birth probably, in whatever the circumstances, has that sense that that's quite an epic journey for their child from one world into the next. We've all also had that journey ourselves, no matter how much or how little we remember about it. So we're really keen to make a piece about that, where mothers, new parents, babies see themselves reflected. It's a preliminary part of that project where mothers came together and creatively journaled about their experiences of birth journeys and also of mothering. And I think one of the most powerful things that came out of that, there were so many, that struck me the most was that even in the face of some quite traumatic experiences, these women, when they were given the agency to have their voice, to put it through their own creative process with their own voice, it changed things. There was a kind of alchemy to that, so that they came out of that feeling more empowered. So they were sometimes in experiences in birth where they felt that their agency or voice was taken away, that was not listened to. And it's interesting how that, to some degree, seemed to return as they put their experiences through this process. That was a big eye-opener for me and for them, I think, as well.
Yeah. And how do you support parents in the sessions, but then at the same time kind of guide kids? Like, you have to find the right sweet spot between both of the things. Like, how do you do that?
I think for us, we run a mixture of regular workshops, but also interactive, inclusive concerts, and then also shows, baby operas. And they're all slightly different. But in all of those, I think there's an idea of building with the early years children with their needs in mind, being very hands-on, very multisensory, very, very active involvement. And there's another layer going on at all times where you are also interacting with the adults. And for us, it really does tend to be caregivers. We call them grown-ups because they aren't always parents. We have, how
grandparents.
Yes. And it's so varied, and we celebrate that so much. And we've done so much on so many levels to welcome and encourage that, because that is beneficial to everyone, isn't it? When the village widens a little bit and mothers are not left alone holding the baby, literally. Yeah. So yeah, that's a really big part of what we do. So part of that looks like group singing. Sometimes it looks like singing in rounds, and the adults are singing. Obviously, babies and toddlers are not generally joining in yet with rounds, or not recognisably, but they are hearing and experiencing when the adults around them are singing in harmony. So we use that, we harness the power of that, we point it out, we say that they may not be getting that experience elsewhere. It's lovely. Often, you'll know this, you all work in singing. It's so common to hear people saying, I can't sing. You wouldn't want to hear my voice. So sometimes it's gently pointing out that babies do love their caregivers' voices because they've been hearing them since they were in the womb. And to them, it signals familiarity and safety. And it really doesn't matter that person doesn't think they're Beyonce.
Yeah, when we were designing the Music and Motherhood study, it was really important to us that we started with thinking of this as a musical experience for the mums, obviously for the babies as well, but very much as a unit. And that this would be something that musically felt really rewarding for the mums as well. And so examples of how we sort of tried to cultivate that were encouraging mums to, after a while, as they got more confident and comfortable in the group, to maybe share a song that they were sung in their childhood, songs that they would want to sing to their baby. And then to learn that within the group. And so that facilitated this really lovely sort of sharing of songs from all different cultures, different types of music. And that was a way of making it for them. It's like a kind of me time. And some of them talked about how important that was musically, sort of that it wasn't necessarily songs that you would associate with children, like nursery rhymes or something, but actually it was like songs for us as parents and caregivers. And as you were saying, Zoe, of course, that's also songs for the babies because they're going to love hearing it. They're going to enjoy hearing their parents singing. They're going to be exposed to all that music and all that those different styles of music, which I think is also really fabulous. And in the research, they really drew this out as something that was important. It's like, it's for me. And there was, I think, a sense of often in the transition to parenthood, some of them felt a bit kind of lost, like I don't have time for me. I don't have time to sort of just to be or to think about who I am now or what I've been through and all of those things. And this music and the music being for them was a way of sort of connecting with that again a little bit, I think.
Yeah. That really resonates from things that we've heard people say as well. Yes. And almost the surprise that it can be very beneficial, nurturing for them as well as for the children, and that those two things can go together.
Yeah, it's not like one or the other. You don't have to do this for your baby only. It can be for both of you at the same time.
You mentioned, Rosie, I think, about the fact that the mood, particularly if it's something as serious as PND, but probably lots of aspects of mood and mental health and well-being can transfer from parent to baby or carer to baby. And so I guess it follows, doesn't it, that if the carer is doing something which is for them and that they enjoy, so then that benefit is going to transfer down because it's kind of, you're getting the right vibe, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's this sort of virtuous circle thing that I was is that the right phrase, virtuous circle? I think so.
Yeah, which sort of I guess begs the question about kind of, is there such a thing as music for babies, given that actually partly from what you're saying now, actually it's just as much about what the adult is kind of engaging with and enjoying as well.
So I think there really definitely is music that babies respond to better. I notice in the Children's Hospital we work with a variety of different ages, from the neonatal surgical ward where they are newborns, neonates, up to older ones on the intensive care unit. It's very noticeable that with the very young babies, they seem to gravitate to listening to things that are slower and quite gentle. So we often end up singing lullabies. They will often, in sessions outside of the hospital, be transfixed by quite a slow classical piece of music, like Nuit d'Étoiles by Debussy or something similar to that, with lights and and shining objects. As they get a little bit older, as they get to a few months old, you can see them needing stimulation. You can see them craving something to look at as well, hand movements, and a slightly different a slightly different vibe to things. And then as they get older and older again, it all broadens out and it all becomes about their development and their learning. So yes, I think one of the problems that has existed traditionally is that people do music for very young children and think it all needs to be very upbeat and cheerful. We've had that comment a few times anyway, that it really works, this very slow. And I guess it takes some time to process as well. I don't know what the science behind that is, but they seem to need time to listen and process.
Is there any research about that, Rosie?
Not that I know of, or at least not to my mind. But I mean, it makes logical sense, doesn't it? That they're getting used to the sounds that they're hearing, and it would make sense that would take some time to process. And of course, we know that it's not long before musical preferences start to be formed and young children start to find some music that they enjoy more than other music, and that then develops over life. And as we know, becomes such an important part of identity formation and all that as well. And I think I often, when I'm thinking about music and well-being and music and health, I'm often reminded about the importance of that preference. It's, there's always this danger, isn't there, that music or singing, and in this case, is seen as this thing that can really support well-being and health. But it's unlikely to do that if we're singing a song that we really don't like, that we don't like the lyrics, or we don't like the melody, or we just don't like the soundscape. And the research would back this up, right? It's when we have agency in taking part, when it's music that we enjoy or we feel affinity with, that we're much more likely to have positive impact from that music. And I imagine that's the same for very young people as well. But of course, they're learning their musical world, aren't they, in those first years, and being exposed to all different types of music and then forming those preferences as they get a bit older. So yeah, fascinating. Lots of research to do there, I guess.
Inspiring Voices. Interlude.
We all know that singing brings people together. But on Sing Up Day, we can unite the entire world. Sing Up Day is back, and the 18th of June marks the 15th anniversary of our global singing celebration, and you're invited. This year's empowering anthem, In Me I Trust, is all about self-belief, trusting in ourselves, and tapping into our inner strength. Have a listen.
In me I trust that I'm enough. I will not hide my sense of pride. I know I'm loved, I'm lifted up. So I'll choose this day to celebrate. Now switch it up.
Whether you're a school, community group, choir, or just friends who love to sing, Sing Up Day is for everyone. Register for free as a Sing Up friend, and you'll instantly get everything you'll need. All the song's audio tracks, lyrics, interactive whiteboard and score, teaching materials and activities including an assembly plan. Plus, this year, we've also got a special songwriting project and a rap writing activity written by Rap Club founder and previous Inspiring Voices guest, Ben Turner. Don't forget to put your group on the map. Literally, add your celebration to our interactive Sing Up Day map and send in your performance of In Me I Trust to shine in our worldwide DigiChoir video. Join in with thousands of singers for our global singing celebration. Jump on over to singup.org/singupday to grab your resources now.
Sing it.
Sing Up Day, the 18th of June. Add your voice to our global chorus and celebrate the power of singing.
You were talking earlier about this sort of virtuous circle or kind of feedback loop. I think we've talked about it a few times in the conversation already, but a child gets happier because they're hearing the singing, then it makes the parent happier, and then the parent does more singing and they get happier. Is there any research kind of exploring that?
Good question. I can't think of any that explicitly is looking at that, but I think definitely in our research, we got that feedback from the mums that, for example, there's a lovely story that perhaps is a good way of answering this question. There was a mum involved in our study whose baby was in the hospital a lot. So they would spend time kind of in and out of the hospital, which was obviously really disruptive, really difficult for everybody. And the mum described how the songs that she'd been learning in Music and Motherhood was a tool that she would use in the night to try and calm her baby when the baby was distressed and crying in the ward, which probably, a highly stressful situation, especially if there are other mums and babies or parents and babies around and your baby's crying in the night. And she would use the songs and she would see the effect on the baby of it just calming, regulating, just kind of soothing the situation a little bit. And then that would help her to feel like, it's okay, I can do this. Like, I have got a way to regulate and to be in this moment and to cope with it. And so there was that sort of qualitative example, I suppose, of this kind of feedback loop or virtuous circle that we've been talking about, because then she felt calm and more able to deal with the situation. And so it's a kind of co-regulation thing happening for both her and the baby in that story. And this research was almost 10 years ago, and that story has just stayed with me as such a powerful example of a really tangible way that singing can be used outside of the kind of formal session that she'd come to. There's all the benefits of being in a room with other people and doing it in the moment, but then there's benefits that you take away and that you can then draw on in the moments that you need them. And that's another thing about singing. There's no instrument that needed to be kind of got out of a bag or anything. It was just there. It could just happen kind of spontaneously.
Yeah. And Zoe, can you identify that when you're running sessions yourself? Have you ever kind of seen that happen?
Yeah, I'm loving that story. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Just the ripple effect of that experience, and sort of I'm remembering. It's familiar in terms of things people have said to us. We had a mum at the hospital. We went in recently to one of the wards, and we went back in a second week and saw them 2 weeks in a row. And she said that she'd been able to use some of the songs we'd sung. She'd loved the way her little one had responded to them when we went in, and she had gone away and she'd been able to sing those with him. And that had obviously brought her as empowerment, I think, because it was giving her a tool. It was giving her a new way of interacting with a baby. I'm remembering back to when I was a first-time mother of my oldest, and, I had music as a tool. I had singing as a tool, but I hesitated to use it, partly because I didn't see anything coming back to me. And I wasn't trained in any of this stuff back then. I probably didn't know what I was looking for, but also little babies, perhaps, their responses to things, they may not be that visible to an untrained eye or an inexperienced eye or ear. And unless we really know that it's beneficial, we might doubt ourselves and stop, and not use that. So there's a really important place, isn't there, for communicating the benefits to people, and also for understanding that it's okay if we don't see anything coming back from them.
Yeah. I've shared previously, when my son was in hospital, we sang a lot with him, and he seemed to get more relaxed, but it also helped us relax. And it was sort of like, it's kind of helping everybody, but it helps you also feel like you can do something.
Yeah, and we saw that really clearly in the qualitative research that we did with Music and Motherhood. One of the main things that they told us about the singing group that wasn't there in the non-musical parts of what we did was around achievement and feeling like I can do this. Like, I achieved something, I came here, I sang, I learned some songs that I can maybe take out into my day-to-day. And I think the mum spoke about how sometimes you don't really feel like you're achieving much when you're a new mum, because although you are, of course, achieving loads, it can feel quite monotonous. You're doing the same things every day. Maybe you're not finding it easy to get out of the house or do things that you'd used to be doing. So having that sense of achievement is so important, and especially in the context of postnatal depression, when you might be experiencing like doubts around your parenting and those sorts of really difficult thoughts.
Yeah. And how can we extend that to different types of families? So possibly families where it would be foster parents or maybe grandparents who are caring for young children. How can these sort of benefits also extend in those different family structures?
I think there's lots of ways we could answer that, but I think one of the things that's so accessible about singing is that, as we've been saying, anyone can do it. And so I think it's about building it into the day-to-day, having a song maybe that you sing while you're doing the nappy change or having the bath or at bedtime, and just having songs that are in families, wide families, or within particular groups, learning those songs and having that sort of just there as part of parenting. And I think with that comes with this idea of kind of breaking down the idea of I'm not musical, I can't sing and all that. Like, it's not something that you need to have learned. It's not something that you need to have particular skills in. It's just something you can do. It's just like an extension of chatting to your baby, and sort of supporting parents to just play with that a little bit. Sorry, parents and others in the wider family. Carers, yeah, exactly. To just play with that. Just see what it's like, see what works for your family. Like, maybe it's putting on your favorite tune at the end of the day and having a little bop around the kitchen, whatever it is. And that goes back to the thing about preference, doesn't it? It's, I think, really important for carers, families, parents to just have the freedom to play with it, find out what works musically for them, give it a go.
Yeah. I love how you're using the word play repeatedly there, because I think that's at the heart of it. I've been reading a lot about the importance of play in childhood, and musical play is part of that, isn't it? It's so important. We learn much more quickly when we're in a playful mode, apparently, and harnessing the power of that in parenting is just wonderful, I think, or in caregiving. Also fun. There's research into babies and humour and the way babies experience funniness, and making up songs. And like you were saying earlier, narrating things. It aids their speech and language development. It helps them to name things, to label things, doesn't it? What we're doing, what we're seeing, where we're going, how we're feeling about it. It helps children. It's empowering to children to recap the day and name those things. So making up songs about things does all of that, and it's silly and it's fun because we're making up stuff on the spot. We're improvising, aren't we? We're very much in the present moment, just making up something that will probably cause us to laugh because it will be so silly.
Yeah. And it's interesting too to think about the challenges in other cultures where maybe singing might not be kind of socially accepted, or what kinds of challenges do you also find in those environments?
Yeah, I hear you, and we haven't really experienced many challenges like that. No,
that's great.
We really haven't. I've got to tell you, just before I came on air to talk to you, I had a message from a mother at the Children's Hospital who sent us a voice file of her singing in Urdu, and said, I want you to hear this and I want you to play it to some of the children that you're working with. And so she was sort of coming into an exchange with us, wanting to share her voice and her music. That's by far the most common thing that we find. I think a sensitivity to all sorts of things. Song lyrics was one of the very first things that I became aware of this with, but it wasn't just different cultures. It was around gender stereotyping, and it was around family setups and what those look like, and it was around different races and cultures and religions and creeds. It was around all sorts of things, that there are song lyrics out there from traditional nursery rhymes that just need to be rethought, and need to be put through a lens of a bit more sensitivity. So I guess that's the sort of thing that you're talking about, and we can make up lyrics that are more suitable, that fit our needs and requirements, can't we?
And I guess also kind of that openness that you have, and that Rosie, you were talking about earlier too, that openness around let's all share songs from our own cultures also helps.
Yeah, I mean, without doubt, in the projects I've been involved in, that sense of just being able to start where you are musically, with the music that's important to you, and then cultivating that sense of interest in the music that other people bring, and keeping all of that completely kind of equal. It's just singing and music, and people can bring all different styles and genres and musical backgrounds into that space. And I think you're right, it's about openness and sensitivity, like you were saying, Zoe. I haven't led these groups myself, but I've just observed such sensitivity in the leaders, just responding to who's there and what the day is like for them and the babies on that day, and just being so responsive to everything that people are bringing in to that space and everyone who's in that space.
Yeah, that's a really key word, isn't it? Responsive. I think when we're doing music well in the early years, responsiveness is really key. I think it's a really, really vital part of good practice.
Yeah.
Responding to what they are giving back, and it keeps us on track. It keeps us from singing a very inappropriate, loud, bouncy song with a baby that really needs something quite slow and quiet.
Can I ask a little bit about, I suppose, the partner figure within the, I mean, we talked about gender stereotyping, and I suppose there's a degree of family unit stereotyping as well. But certainly in my experience, particularly in hospital wards, actually, of the male presence being aware of their lower pitch of voice, which sometimes might make them self-conscious, but also maybe what their role is at this point in the family unit and whether it is their job to be communicating through singing as well. And yeah, so any insights, any thoughts about that partner figure?
We've had some lovely experiences of fathers and grandfathers singing with babies. It's just been really, really beautiful. I notice in the groups outside of the hospital, for example, I notice in groups when we're group singing, and the male voices bring a sort of depth of harmony to things, and people quite often comment on that. People comment on it in a really positive way, that how much they enjoy that. And it's wonderful for the babies. It's another colour, it's another instrument in the room, isn't it? And
We used to often every night at bath time sing the lion, the A Weem Away song. And my husband would do the Weem Away, the whole Weem Away bit.
Nice.
And I would do the In the Jungle. So we would have a huge Lion King party.
that sounds like such a fun bath time.
It does, yeah. I mean, I agree completely. I think although the research projects that I've done have been mainly with mums for lots of reasons, but we did ask around the extent to which the music kind of rippled out to partners. And it did. There was stories of, like you say, it becoming a family moment, or of partners also observing how maybe it would change the mood of the mum, and that being positive within the family as well. But I mean, I'm so strongly of the belief that it's something that all parents and carers can, if they want to, engage with, and that the benefits would hopefully kind of permeate out to the family. And you were talking about melodies for mums. Breathe Arts Health Research are now piloting melodies for dads as well. So
Oh, great.
yeah, there's definitely real awareness of the fact that parental mental health is important, for every parent and carer. So yeah, I think that's exciting development.
And if singing can help improve the bonding between mothers and babies, of course, singing can improve the bonding between fathers and babies as well.
It really does, yeah. And the babies hear their mother's voice from, Rosie can probably put me right on this, but it's around 26, 28 weeks in the womb, isn't it?
It's really, yeah.
Yeah, and but also another partner or other adults who are around in the family, they'll be hearing their voices as well. They respond differently to music they heard in the womb after they're born, and they respond differently to voices that they heard in the womb after they're born. They remember.
And I used to attend a lot of 1 o'clock clubs and Sure Start centers, and I know that obviously with changes in governments, those have become more and more scarce. And so accessibility can be an issue, can't it, really, for families on lower incomes? And, are there any ideas that you guys have about that? What improvements around there can be done?
I mean, yes, I absolutely agree that there are challenges and things for us to think about in terms of accessibility and equal access and all of these things. In the book I edited, there was a chapter around libraries and rhyme times in libraries. And I find this a really powerful way of sort of embedding singing and music in community activities that are open to the community. They don't come with a charge or anything like that. Anyone can come along to them. Of course, there may still be barriers to whether people choose to attend or see that as something that they can attend. But rhyme times where basically they sit around and children they have some stories and they do some singing and maybe there's some puppets. The chapter talks about how with just quite minor modifications, those could become spaces that can also look after parents' well-being and mental health. So just taking care to have a moment of social interaction, for example, with people around, or saying, just letting people know how pleased the leader is that they've come, and, you know, really well done for coming out of the house today and being with us here today. And just these little modifications within community settings that can just support people to feel that it's for them, that they can come, and that they can potentially have a well-being benefit. And I think that's just a really interesting model of how something can be embedded in a way that is quite sustainable, because these rhyme times are often happening anyway. And then singing can be integrated into it. And with just a little bit of direction and directional thinking around the parents and the carers who are there and what they might need and what they might benefit from it, it can become a kind of well-being moment, as well as a way of learning and hearing books and stories and songs and all of those things for the babies as well.
Yeah, that's a beautiful point. And I would just like to say that Sandwell Libraries near Birmingham in the Black Country are a beautiful example of people doing that so well. If anyone wants to go and actually observe that, I think that they are treading that balance of creating warm, open spaces, as you say, intentionally, directionally welcoming and signposting people where necessary. It's absolutely phenomenal, while making books accessible, creating songs, bringing in theatre, bringing in music. There are other organisations as well. We partner with a community garden in Walsall, again in the Black Country, that is designed, it's built on a wasteland space, and it's designed to teach children and communities about growing and about the environment and about animals and wildlife and insects. And they grow fruit and vegetables and things. But we also have some first songs going on there every week, which is funded. And so that is free at the point of access for families in that area, at least. But again, it's the idea of combining of, libraries and gardens, but it could be any organisation that shares an ethos.
Yeah. And like we were talking about earlier, the sort of at-homeness of singing as well, I think, is so important. Because sometimes it's not possible to get out and about. Maybe you've got other children, or, you know, you're working a lot or whatever. And so there are so many barriers that people could experience, I think. And so where we can just letting parents know that this is a thing that they can do. I think, Zoe, you were saying that you didn't necessarily think to sing that much, you know. And so even those of us who are in music, maybe it's not something that we would do for whatever reason. And so just nudging to parents, hey, you know, you can just have a sing, or make up a song for that difficult bath time. Maybe your baby hates it, and maybe you can just make a joke out of it and have a song, and it might feel a bit better. So I think there's access to kind of musical classes or things in the community, but there's also access to just music at home. And singing is something, of course, that doesn't require anything. Like, there's no equipment or anything, no headphones or speakers or streaming or anything necessarily is needed for it. And it doesn't have to be nursery rhymes if that's not your bag as well.
Yeah. So, Rosie, what's next research-wise?
Yeah, that's a great question. For the last couple of years, we've had a network in music and parental wellbeing, and we are just now thinking about next steps for that network. So we will very soon have an article out which will mark the transition of the network into an alliance, so a Music and Parental Wellbeing Alliance. And that alliance will have a set of missions that we hope to achieve around sort of shaping the evidence base, so reviewing what we already know. And there were some great reviews actually coming out about maternal mental health in particular at the moment, and in music and the arts, but also thinking a little bit about sort of what evidence we need in this very interdisciplinary area. So, like, what does good look like in terms of research in this space? Thinking about supporting practitioners, so health practitioners to be aware of the work, music practitioners in terms of training, support, supervision, and all of these things. And then thinking about sort of sharing all of this, like, how do we best implement and scale up where it's appropriate to do so? What are the barriers to access? So those are the sorts of things that we want to take forward. I should say everyone is very welcome to join. It's free to join. You can find out at musicandparentalwellbeing.org details about what we're up to and how to join. And for me personally, some research I would love to do is extending the the sort of parenting journey beyond the early years. So a lot of the research in music and parental wellbeing has very rightly been done in pregnancy, childbirth, early years. But of course, parenting carries on past that time. So thinking about how music might have a support role for parents as they go through different stages of the parenting journey is something that I'd really, really love to do next. So yeah, watch this space, fingers crossed.
That would be super fascinating and actually really ties in well with Sing Up's work in primary schools. So I wonder whether there's a connection there to look at.
Yeah, I'd love to.
And Zoe, what's the future kind of look like with Bopra?
Yeah, I think continuing to forge partnerships, which seems to be the way that we thrive, working with different libraries and hospitals and community gardens and theatres and the Birmingham Early Years Music Consortium. I think that community way of working, that collaborative way of working with partners is just really enriching, and it seems to keep putting us exactly where we need to be. At the heart of things, with partners who share an ethos but are perhaps doing something in a slightly different way, using a different medium. Like libraries are using books and gardens using nature, but we share this overlap of ethos around wanting to bring people together, around something, around inclusion, around embracing diversity, around all of these things. And wanting good experiences that are supportive for the very youngest children and their families. It's such a massively important time of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the early years, brains are being built and ideas are being sown. We are quite often told this is so much better than putting them on an iPad in the hospital.
Yeah.
This stuff is building their brains, and the alternatives are perhaps less good. So we really, really want to be just doing that, harnessing that as much as we possibly can, and reinforcing that message that we've been talking about today, that every one of you has a voice, and that you can use it with your child, regardless of whether you think it's good or bad, or what you see coming back to you. It will almost certainly be something that's positive to explore.
Yeah. So we're at the point in the conversation where we ask you guys to share an inspiring vocal moment.
It's just from today because it's fresh in the front of my mind. It's from working with a 2.5, not quite 2.5-year-old who is in a long-term ventilation ward on the hospital, has been there for a long, long time, I think all his life actually. And it was just an experience of musical play using a peekaboo song, and this child, in the space of 10 minutes, finding about 60 different variations on this game, just taking the scarf off my head, using absolutely perfect timing on the peekaboo, putting it on his own head, taking it off, varying the timing, being a master of comic timing, taking it off more quickly, or waiting and building suspense with a cheeky grin. Again, just that understanding of timing and fun, and also just having the coordination and the motor skills to be able to do that. And then found a teddy chick that he had in his cot and started playing peekaboo on the chick, and then put the chick in front of the mirror and started moving it so that it disappeared out of view on the peekaboo, and then chuckling and putting the scarf on the chick's head, and also varying the way he took the scarf away. So putting it on my head and whipping it away very quickly like a magician with a big flourish, and then sort of nonchalantly walking away across the cot and just letting it trail away. It was just phenomenal, empowered by singing and music and this game of peekaboo, but the possibilities for that child that contained, that he was able to direct and lead, was mind-blowing.
And actually, he might even continue doing that throughout the day when he's still because being in the hospital can be quite boring and lonely, and you're there for a long time. So that little game, playing with his chick, could be something that he plays throughout the day and remembers the song. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And Rosie, do you have an inspiring vocal moment to share with us?
Yeah, there's quite a few I could choose, but I thought in the spirit of today's session, I'd choose one from my own parenting. And I took both of my children, they're about 3.5 years apart. So at different times, I took both of them to a music group. And there was just this one song that we'd sing sort of towards the end. And it was about being a friend, basically being a friend to your child. Now, mummy's going to be a friend. And I used to sing it to my son, and it was a nice song. But then when my daughter was born, she sort of just developed this affinity with this little song. And so I started to sing it to her before sleep. And like you were saying, sleep was a little bit tricky for a while. And we needed a way of just kind of transitioning into nap time or sleep time. And so I started to sing this song, and it just became a thing that we did day in, day out, often multiple times a day when she was really little and napping a lot. And I could visibly see the tension kind of draining out of her. Wow. I remember being really quite amazed by it, even though I do what I do. I could see it. I could almost just see this, like, oh, in her. I'd be holding her when she was really little. And it's just really, it stayed with me as just a powerful moment of connection, regulation, calming, soothing, something that I could do in this difficult thing of trying to settle a baby day in, day out. So yeah, that has been very inspiring for me. I might even go and sing it to her later, see how she responds now. She's 8 now. I haven't sung it to her for a while, but yeah, it was a big part of our early days.
Beautiful. Beautiful. What was the song?
Do you know, I don't actually know what it's called. I never knew what it was called. It was just "Mummy's gonna be a friend of yours, a little bit more." I don't know actually. Now that you ask what the song is, but it just stuck with me, and she loved it.
Oh, you'll have to tell us, Rosie, whether or not your 8-year-old responds when you sing it to her later.
All right. Yeah, I think she will. I think she'll definitely remember it. I'm going to do it at bedtime tonight and see what she does.
Fantastic. Thank you guys so much for joining us. It's just been amazing conversation and just brilliant.
Thank you all. Yeah, it's been really fabulous.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure and a real privilege to get to talk to you all about my favourite subject.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Inspiring voices, reflections.
Yeah, was that what you expected?
In terms of the conversation?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. We talked about it before, and we were thinking about kind of the way to find the perfect kind of sweet spot between all the research behind parental well-being and obviously the work and practice with babies and obviously parents. And I think the conversation shows that there's no light between them, because it is completely interconnected. The relationship between the benefits of singing for the babies and the impact upon the parents.
Yeah. And it's lovely that singing is such a joyous aspect of that, because there's a, I suppose, a dark side to that, which we didn't touch on so much, but where the relationships between parents and babies and young children don't work, the opposite can happen, that those really important bonds can get broken. But I was interested also, it seems like there's plenty more research to be done to understand this a bit more.
Yeah. And also, the other thing I loved that Rosie gave us at the end there was the things about how, with little tiny tweaks, stuff that's already happening that does already include singing, and, in the rhyme time and the libraries, that like just with little tiny tweaks, that those can actually have a really big impact on parental well-being too.
Yeah. The thing that really jumped out for me is that kind of it's constantly beneficial to keep reminding parents and carers of the value of this work. It never occurred to me, like Zoe said, about, well, actually, I didn't really know. I wasn't keyed into that feedback mechanism to know that my singing was having an impact. And of course, actually, it's easy to sort of take it for granted, because singing to a baby doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to suddenly start going, giving you a really obvious bit of feedback. So that was really interesting. And I think that thing about the power of hearing people singing in harmony, and actually, I suppose in our society, there aren't that many instances of babies and young children hearing people singing together in harmony.
Live.
live, exactly. And that there's definitely a kind of a physical thing of being in a space where that's happening. I mean, we know that, when you're doing it, when you're singing one of those harmonies, it can be absolutely brilliant, but also, to experience it in person is a really powerful thing.
That must be something amazing, though, about sort of resonance, right? Because there is something super incredible just about that sound. And just the way a harmonic sound just makes your brain feel.
Yeah. There's something, I was just reminded of this just the other day when I went to a concert, that actually the power of a live experience of music is always different from a recorded one.
Yeah.
But lots of other really lovely stuff about giving children a voice in the arts, which I thought was a really lovely way of putting it. Opening doors across cultures, the fact that there were just really obvious benefits, certainly in the hospital context, of machines showing the change, the difference. That was really great. And spontaneity and creativity being at the heart of it.
I also really just loved that, Rosie said it really doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be just amazing kind of choral music. It doesn't have to be lullabies. It doesn't have to be baby songs or nursery rhymes. That actually is any songs that you like, that are part of your family, that are part of your culture, any music and singing that you like, that's valuable. Anything.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. And how brilliant, therefore, to have someone from an organisation with opera in the title of the organisation, but in no way whatsoever did you get any sense of sort of highbrowness or anything. It's just that kind of universal accessibility of music. It's just the kind of the context that you do it.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Inspiring Voices. Please remember to subscribe and leave us a review on Apple or Spotify.
Videos of each episode are also available on Sing Up Foundation YouTube channel. For more about us, and to access our library of resources, or to donate to support our work, please visit www.singupfoundation.org.
Thanks to Becky Owen and The Refuge for our beautiful podcast music, specially arranged by Becky and adapted from her song Anemone.